I died once, and now I know, from this moment on, every breath will be a living statement. Not just for me, but for everyone who's ever been made to feel invisible. But there's one last thing I need to say, and it's not about me. It's about all of us. About a truth that no policy, no border wall, no hate-filled slogan can ever erase. I died in the middle of a protest, but the thing I regret the most wasn't dying. It was the way I once lived, as if I didn't deserve to be here. As if working hard enough, bowing low enough, and staying quiet enough would finally make me acceptable. But no one can truly live while carrying the weight of being temporary, and no one can truly love a country that keeps pushing them to its margins. I'm not telling this story to be pitied. I don't need anyone to call me brave. I just want you, if you're watching this, to ask yourself, how are we defining who belongs? Is it by paperwork, by accent, by skin color? Or by what someone is willing to sacrifice to protect this place? I used to believe that home was where you were born, but I was wrong. Home is where you choose to stand, even when the world tells you that you have no right to. Home is where, when you fall, there's still a hand that reaches for you, whether it's from a stranger or the small hand of your daughter. If one day you come across someone silent for too long, know that they are not invisible. They just haven't been heard. And if you see an immigrant standing in a crowd of protesters, don't rush to judge. Maybe, like me, they're just trying to show their child that silence is no longer a way to survive. I died. I came back. And I know now no wall is taller than fear. No document is more valuable than courage. And no one is an outsider. When the pain is real, when the blood is real, when the longing to live fully is real. Don't wait until you're near death to ask yourself, have I truly lived? Ask now, while you still have breath. Because I'm living proof that even a nameless man can rewrite his story not with power, but with one simple choice, to rise. The next morning, I began a 21-day fast. No solid food, just water. No social media, no friends, no movies, nothing that could distract me. I called it the absolute covenant. I told God, I'm giving you all 21 days. If by the end of it, you're still silent, I will walk away from this faith forever. I meant it. I was desperate. And I thought, surely God wouldn't turn away someone longing for him this much, right? Day 1 passed with excitement. I journaled. I prayed for 3 hours straight. I played worship music and felt like I was entering the Holy of Holies. Day 2, the hunger kicked in, but I saw it as a test of faith. I remembered the verse from Matthew, "Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God." I believed I was living that truth. Day 3, my head pounded like a hammer. I dry heaved. I couldn't sleep, but I felt strangely exhilarated, thinking maybe this was when my soul was being purified. On day 4, I began to hear whispers in my heart. I wrote in my journal, "Lord, is that you?" But then the voice went silent. Nothing, just long, dragging hours of stillness. On day 5, I began to lose balance. I felt dizzy every time I got out of bed. I wasn't eating. I wasn't sleeping. I was only breathing, waiting for something supernatural. I texted my best friend, "If God doesn't show up this week, I think I'm done with faith for good." She was worried, but I couldn't turn back. I had entered a one-way road of spiritual defiance. On the 6th day, I woke up in the middle of the night with a crushing weight on my chest. I thought I was dreaming, but my heart was racing wildly and my hands were ice cold. I cried out in the darkness, praying out loud, "God, I've been fasting for 6 days. I'm searching for you. Please don't stay silent. If you don't answer me today, I won't be able to believe anymore." On the 7th day, I decided to attend the early morning prayer meeting at a local church. A soft rain was falling. I grabbed my Bible and a bottle of water. I remember praying the entire drive there. "Please show me something. Anything." I played Oceans by Hillsong. The voice rose over the sound of the rain, and I cried deep, gut-wrenching sobs that felt like they were tearing me apart from the inside. I stopped at a red light. I closed my eyes for just a few seconds. I remember every sound, every raindrop on the windshield, the water trickling down like tears from heaven. Then the headlights. A truck is coming straight toward me. I don't remember if I had time to scream. All I know is that in the very next moment, I wasn't there anymore. Do you believe it's possible that death could be a response from heaven? Not the answer you wanted, but the answer you needed. I had prayed to see God, and He agreed. But before I could meet Him, I had to die. And as my soul rose from my body, I was shown the first truth I had never once considered in my lifetime. It wasn't light that I saw first. It was me. I saw myself from the outside, and then a journey began. A journey where I didn't just encounter God. I encountered my truest self. You have no idea what happens when the soul leaves the body. And the very first thing I heard was a question. Have you ever seen yourself from the outside? Not in a mirror, not in an old photograph, but truly seen yourself lying still, eyes half open, blood seeping from your forehead, hands limp at your side, while strangers around you scramble to save your life. I have. I saw myself, or rather, I saw a body, an empty shell I used to call myself. And in that moment, I knew I was dead. There was no thunder, no music, just a soft release from the body like a string being cut. No pain, no struggle. And then, I was hovering above, near the ceiling of the ambulance. I saw them pull me from the driver's seat, lay me onto the stretcher, and place an oxygen mask over my face. I saw a young EMT silently praying, her eyes trembling with tears. I recognized the name of the hospital they were taking me to. I used to work there. I knew the morning shift belonged to Dr. Matthews. He and I once saved the life of an 8-year-old girl in anaphylactic shock. Now, he was the one trying to keep me from slipping away. How far was I from gone? I don't know, because I didn't feel fear. I didn't feel cold. I didn't feel alone. The strangest part was that I didn't even remember that I was dying. I didn't remember I had ever lived. It felt like being in a dream where you know you're dreaming, but you can't quite remember who you are. I saw everything, the people, the machines, the ambulance, the road. But I no longer felt connected to any of it. I was just watching, a silent witness to something happening to someone else. That body, that flesh, it wasn't me anymore. And right then in the stillness, a question echoed from somewhere far beyond. If I am no longer that body, then who am I? I was pulled upward suddenly and swiftly, as if an invisible cord had yanked me out of the world. The hospital vanished. The street, the earth itself, all of it blurred and fell away like scenery speeding past a train window. I moved through darkness, but not a cold or frightening kind. It was a living darkness. A darkness that breathed. It surrounded me like water, but I didn't choke. I simply drifted. There was no time, no gravity. I don't know how long I floated. A second? A lifetime? Somehow both felt true. And then, the light began to appear. Not a light at the end of a tunnel, like people often describe, but a light emerged from within me. It was as though I was being peeled away from layers of shadow, and what remained, what was finally revealed, was the radiant core of my soul. I felt myself becoming lighter, clearer. Every layer of resentment, doubt, worry, fear, pride dissolved. Not because I let them go, but because they were never really mine. They were only shadows that had clung to my spirit, and in this light, they could no longer stay. I was led into a space without a ceiling, without walls, without borders. Everything was light, but the light didn't blind, it knew me. It saw me. It loved me. And then I heard music, not with my ears, but from within me. It was as though every cell, every memory, every piece of who I had ever been began to resonate, rising into a melody. There are no words in any language to describe that sound. It wasn't a song. It was true. It was the frequency of the soul. I cried. There were no tears, but I cried. Because I saw myself clearly, not the version in the mirror, but my true self, shattered, fragile, longing to be loved and always hiding it. The version of me that tried so hard to get everything right, going to church, doing charity work, fasting, reading the Bible every day, yet still felt empty. And in that space, I finally understood why. I had been doing all those things to be approved, not to be connected. I remember whispering in my heart, "Lord, I was wrong." In that exact moment, I felt a presence. Not light, not music, not angels, but something beyond all of it, the presence of Him. Jesus didn't walk in. He didn't appear from a distance. He had been there all along, long before I realized. It was as if He was the space, the light, the music. And the moment I turned my heart toward Him, I heard a voice not through my ears, not as sound, but from deep within me, stronger than anything I had ever known. He said, "You've been seeking me through suffering, but I am never hidden in pain." I froze. Then He spoke again. "Fasting is not the path to me. It is the place where you let go of yourself, so you can see I've been standing there all along." I panicked. For a moment I wanted to say, "But Lord, I fasted for you. I gave up food, gave up everything, cried out to you for 7 days." But before I could even finish the thought, He responded gently, "Yes, but you fasted with a closed heart. You prayed without forgiving. You sacrificed, yet still clung to what you believed was right. It was as if I had been completely laid bare. No one accused me. No one condemned me. But I saw myself fully at the root. I had stopped eating, but I held on to resentment. I had prayed, but I didn't listen. I had fasted, but I never let go. And God never asked for an empty stomach. He asked for a tender heart. I fell to my knees not physically, but with my soul. And I whispered, "I don't deserve to see you." Then came his reply, soft as breath, "No one deserves it. But I love you." That sentence broke me completely. It shattered everything I had built my life on. The striving, the need to be loved, to be accepted, to be seen. I had spent a lifetime trying to earn love, but that love had been there all along. I just hadn't been humble enough to receive it. I had tried to bargain with God through fasting, but all he ever wanted was for me to let go. I don't know how long I was there. I don't know if I was light, or music, or wave, or pure awareness. All I knew was this: I was seen. I was known. I was loved not because I was worthy, but because he is love. And then, I heard a voice calling. Gentle, but unmistakably clear. It wasn't from Jesus. It came from somewhere beyond, like a whisper echoing from behind a veil. A woman's voice. "Sarah, come back. Come back to us." I knew that voice. It was my daughter. And I realized I had to return. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to live to tell this. No one is meant to stay silent after seeing what I saw. No one is meant to keep a gift like this to themselves. When I came back, it felt like being pulled backward through a vortex. Everything grew heavier. My vision dimmed. My body returned. I saw the lights of the ICU. I heard the machines. I looked down at my arms, tangled in 4 lines. But I was different. Completely different. And I need to tell you what Jesus showed me. Something no one had ever told me before. A vision of strands of light stretching from earth to heaven. And why not every fast is truly connected? As I returned to spiritual awareness, the light around me began to shift. It no longer radiated from every direction without form. It was gathering now, centering, shaping itself into a focal point. A center that had no name, but I knew it. This was where everything began. I didn't hear footsteps. I didn't see a door open. But I knew. I knew someone was coming. And not just anyone. It was him. I didn't see his face. Not because he was hiding it, but because I couldn't bear the light. It wasn't the kind of light that hurt your eyes or made you afraid. It was the kind that made you see everything. Everything I had ever believed to be right. Every tower of pride I had built. Every time I thought I was doing good. All of it stood exposed in his presence. No words were spoken. But he knew. And in that moment, I knew that he knew me better than I had ever known myself. Have you ever felt a gaze that saw straight through you? And still loved you? No judgment. No rebuke. No indifference. Just pure presence, knowing you and loving you. An unconditional love that undoes you. I couldn't stand. But I didn't fall. I no longer had a body to fall with. I simply knelt, in my soul completely bare. Then he spoke. Not through sound. Not through space. It was a voice that moved directly into my awareness. Not a sound. A truth. Where did you think I was during all your fasting? I didn't know how to answer. I stumbled in my mind. I thought, you were testing me. Silence followed. But the silence itself became the answer. And then he said, "You fasted to bargain. But I am not a transaction." That sentence sliced straight into the sacred pride I hadn't even realized I was holding. I thought I was fasting out of faith. I thought I was making a sacrifice. I thought I deserved to hear from heaven. But Jesus didn't look at me with disappointment. He looked at me with a love that hurt more than any rebuke ever could. "You fasted to get me to follow your will," he continued. "But true fasting is when you surrender yours." And I began to understand. I started to recall every moment of those 7 days. The times I prayed with solemn intensity. The times I thought, God didn't speak, maybe I need one more day. The times I looked at others and thought, I'm sacrificing. They're not. The times I planned how I'd tell my friends, God appeared to me because I fasted. I saw it all as clearly as a slow-motion film reel. And I hated what I saw. I saw myself as selfish within a sacred act. I had used fasting as a way to pressure God, not as a way to draw near to him. "But I truly wanted to see you," I whispered in my heart. "I know," he replied, "and I've always been there. Not when you started fasting, but long before that. I was there in the nights you cried quietly, in the mornings when you stared at the sky, not knowing what to pray. In the moments you thought I had abandoned you, those were the very moments I was holding you." I broke down in tears. Real tears this time. I don't know how, but I could feel them. They felt like layers of guilt melting away. I couldn't stop them. I didn't want to. Because I wasn't just crying from truth. I was crying from a kind of love I had never known before. Jesus raised his hand not to lift me, but to show me something. In the palm of his hand appeared a thin, golden thread of light. It wasn't made of matter. It was a connection. "This is true fasting," he said. The thread pulsed with a steady, strong, radiant glow. It stretched from his hand to a distant point, where a soul was in prayer. I saw an elderly woman, kneeling beside her bed, hands trembling as she held a worn-out Bible. She hadn't gone without food for long, just skipped one meal. But every word of her prayer glowed like sunlight. "Why is her fasting so powerful?" I asked. "Because she didn't fast to make me do something," he answered. "She fasted to remind herself that I am enough. She fasted to listen, not to demand." Immediately after, I saw another thread. At first it glowed, but then it flickered, trembled, and went dark. I followed it and saw a man live streaming about 21 days of fasting to attract miracles. I recognized the look in his eyes, hopeful, flashy, and empty. "Why did this one go dark?" I asked. "Because it came from the ego," Jesus replied, "not the heart." I shuddered. How many times in my life had I done righteous things just to be seen? How many times had I fasted, prayed, given not to be transformed, but to be noticed, praised, or to fill the emptiness inside me? I saw thousands of threads like that. Some glowed brightly. Some were frayed. Some were pulled taut from inner battles. Some had been cut off by bitterness. Others were knotted with unconfessed guilt. And I realized fasting is not an action. It's a condition of the soul. Jesus continued, "Fasting doesn't change me. It changes you. If you fast without humbling yourself, without forgiving, without loving others, then all you're doing is going hungry, not drawing closer to me." I collapsed in my soul. There was nothing left to defend. Nothing left to argue. I saw it clearly. I was a good person, but a proud one. I was someone who prayed, but with a closed heart. I had fasted, but I had never truly let God lead me through that fast. I wept not from shame, but from release. For the first time, I understood. Fasting isn't meant to force God to speak. It's to quiet us enough so we can finally hear him. "What do I do now?" I asked through tears. "You live," he said, "and you tell your story, not to impress, not to be known, but so that those who are fasting in silence will know I have heard them. Every word, every sob, every tear in the middle of the night." I looked into his eyes, and I was no longer afraid of death. I no longer saw myself as broken. I only felt grateful to have died, so I could truly come alive. Next, I will share with you something no one has ever seen before, the journey between two worlds, where I witnessed thousands of souls praying, fasting, crying out, and why only a few truly connected with heaven. What makes the difference? He didn't tell me to go. He didn't command. He didn't point. But the gaze of Jesus, or rather, the overwhelming pull of his presence opened something behind me. Like a doorway made of will, not walls. A gentle breeze passed through, not cold, but full of purpose. I didn't walk toward it. I was drawn, my soul pulled in the direction of what God wanted me to witness. And I was willing. Because I knew I was about to see something that people like me, people who fast, should have seen long ago. The all-encompassing white light faded. The warm colors, the eternal music, dissolved. In front of me was a space unlike anything I had known. It resembled Earth, yet it wasn't Earth. Cities, streets, and people were there, but not in solid form. Everything seemed wrapped in a faint glow, slightly translucent, gently vibrating. I realized I was seeing the world from the perspective of a soul. A higher layer. Not detached, but deeper. I floated past a slum neighborhood in Lagos, Nigeria. In a cramped room with no windows, I saw a 12-year-old boy kneeling beside a rickety bamboo bed. He clutched a tattered Bible, its spine barely holding. His eyes were tightly shut. His lips moved in prayer in a language I didn't understand. But my heart understood. Not just mine. The entire sky above him trembled. A strand of light rose from his forehead, steady, blazing, strong. It pierced the heavens and connected to a place far above me, a realm I could feel was in complete agreement. In my spirit, I cried out, "Is he fasting?" A whisper answered, like an echo from the soul realm. "No. He hasn't eaten because there is nothing to eat. But he prays as if he is full. And heaven calls that fasting." My throat tightened. I had thought fasting was a ritual with rules: skip meals, deny pleasure, recite prayers, keep vows. But heaven saw something else entirely: intention, heart. love, and faith even when there's nothing in your hands. I was taken to a large church in California. A young pastor, sharply dressed, stood center stage, live streaming to thousands. He lifted a glass of water and proclaimed, "Day 14 of fasting. Today I'm going to teach you how to attract God's blessing in the next 24 hours." The crowd erupted in applause. Comments flooded the screen. "Amen. I'm fasting with you, Pastor. I believe in financial breakthrough." But there were no threads of light, no connection rising from that stage. Only one thing I had never expected to see: black smoke. It was thin, almost invisible, but I saw it leaking from his chest, from the place where the soul's light was meant to shine. And I heard a whisper from the higher realm. "This is fasting for the self. There is no love, no surrender, no me." And suddenly I saw more clearly than ever. What connects a soul to heaven is not the act, but the intention behind it. Not everyone who fasts is heard. Not everyone who denies food is drawing near. Only those who fast with hearts rightly aligned in love, in humility, in forgiveness, in sacred stillness create a thread that reaches heaven. I drifted past a single mother in Mexico. She sat by a cold fireplace, her hand resting gently on the head of her feverish child. Her eyes were closed. I heard her whisper, "Lord, I don't need anything for me. Please save this boy. I can endure hunger, pain, loss, just please don't take him." And from her, not one, but two threads of light shot upward. One from her chest, one from the boy's forehead. They braided together, forming a triple-stranded prayer that shimmered like diamonds against the night sky. I trembled. I couldn't hold back the tears. Heaven was listening, not because she had fasted for days, but because she fasted with unconditional love. Then, I was taken to a modern office in Seoul. A young CEO sat cross-legged in meditation. On his desk were detox water, scented candles, and a vision board covered in pictures of luxury cars, homes, and stock portfolios. His breath was steady. His focus is intense. And then I heard him think aloud, "I'm doing a 30-day fast to raise my vibration. I'm aligning with the universe. I am light." But no light came from him. Only silence. No echo. No response. No connection. I turned toward a rural village in India. An elderly woman sat beneath an ancient tree, hands folded gently at her chest. She wasn't praying aloud, just breathing, steady, peaceful. She asked for nothing, expected nothing, and from her belly, I saw a soft stream of light rise upward. It wasn't radiant, but it was steady, humble, enduring. Heaven, I realized, listens in a language far different from the one we imagine. Then I began to see a map, a living map that covered the earth. On it, threads of light appeared, each connecting a human heart to the eternal realm. Each one had a different color, brightness, and length. Some places shone brilliantly in poor neighborhoods, orphanages, and cancer wards. Other areas were dim towering skyscrapers, flashy stages, and trendy spiritual live streams. I didn't judge. I just felt sorrow, because I had once believed I was the one fasting the right way, while all around the world were people who never even called it fasting, yet they touched God more deeply than I ever had. I saw a young girl in Pakistan, beaten for her faith. She fasted not for a miracle, but to keep her spirit clean while everything around her was falling apart. I saw an old man in Poland, sitting alone in an empty church, eyes closed, whispering, "Lord, I'm fasting today, only because I have no one left to cook for me." And from him, a gentle, golden light rose warm as the last ray of winter sun. I wanted to cry out, "We've misunderstood fasting for far too long. We think fasting is to get a miracle, but it's actually to become tender enough to notice the miracle that's already here. We think fasting is about giving up food to hear God, but God has always been speaking. We just needed to be quiet enough to listen. We think fasting is some high spiritual achievement, but to heaven, fasting isn't about how long, it's about how deep." I turned back and saw Jesus standing in the light. He didn't say a word, but his eyes asked, "Have you seen enough?" I nodded, tears still streaming down my face. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "Not because I fasted the wrong way, but because I once believed I was doing it right." He stepped closer and placed his hand on my forehead. A warmth flowed through me, through my soul, like water rushing over desert sand. Then I heard his final words before he faded from the scene. "Tell them, not to teach, but to help them remember what they've always known in their hearts." I woke up in the ICU, but I wasn't the same, and life after death didn't begin with a miracle, it began with a decision to live honestly. "Are you ready?" I was still trembling after being pulled from that living map of light. After seeing thousands of souls fasting, each one unique, each one deeply real, I could no longer cling to anything I once assumed was true. I had no more confidence in rehearsed prayers, no more pride in my past fasts and sacrifices. I felt like a child who had spent years in the wrong classroom, finally standing before the real teacher, realizing I had never understood the lesson. And then I saw Jesus again. Not because I called, not because I searched. He appeared as if he had never left. He was still there, as he always had been. He didn't ask if I understood. He didn't test me. He didn't lecture. He looked at me like a father looking at a child who had just woken from a long and difficult dream. "Do you know why I let you see all of that?" he asked. I hadn't yet answered before he continued. "Because millions are fasting, but very few are fasting to let go." That sentence hit something deep in my soul. I remembered all the images I had just witnessed, the broken threads of light, the dark smoke, the desperate prayers laced with fear and conditions. I saw myself again 7 days earlier, sitting in my small apartment, jaw clenched, eyes shut tight, reciting scripture like an incantation, with a heart full of demands. And I shuddered with the realization I wasn't so different from them. I too had prayed not to be near God, but to force him to come near me. I had fasted not to surrender, but to prove something. To him, to others, to myself. "Fasting is when you willingly become weak, so that I can become strong within you," Jesus continued. But most people fast to prove how strong they are, strong enough to overcome even their most basic needs. They go without food, but not without harsh words. They avoid meat and drink, but hold tightly to resentment. They disconnect from meals, but never disconnect from pride. Fasting has no power if your heart hasn't been softened. My breathing grew shallow not from fear, but because every word he spoke was true. I had once believed fasting was the highest form of spirituality. But he showed me, true fasting isn't measured in days or hours or skipped meals. It's measured in how much we let go of inside. And the hardest things to give up aren't food. They're ego, pride, wounds, anger, and the need to control. "So what should I do when I return?" I asked. "Live," he said, "not as before, but as someone who has seen. And tell them this, I am not moved by loud prayers. I am not drawn to the hunger of the stomach, but to the breaking of the heart." He reached out not to lead me by the hand, but to pass through me something deeper, will. I felt a current flow through my soul. It wasn't light. It wasn't electricity. It was love taking form. It didn't push me. It opened me. And then he spoke one final time. "There are 3 things you must remember and tell them. 1. Fasting does not make me love you more, but it can help you love me more rightly. 2. I don't want your courage if you won't let me touch your deepest fear. 3. You can fast for 40 days, but if you cannot let go of the anger in your heart, then your soul remains full of darkness." I wanted to remember every word not with my mind, but with my soul. I felt myself melt away like a drop of water falling into the ocean. No more boundaries. No more ego. Just a new version of me, lighter, smaller, but more honest than ever before. Then he asked, "Do you want to go back?" I hesitated not because I didn't want to live, but because this place felt so true, so right, so complete. But I knew, truth is not meant to be kept, it's meant to be shared. So I nodded, even as my heart trembled. I began to see my body below me. The ICU. The machines. The ventilator. I saw Dr. Matthews checking my pupils. I saw a nurse adjusting the oxygen line. I saw my best friend, Emily, standing just outside the glass door, holding her Bible tightly to her chest, her lips moving in prayer. But she wasn't praying for me to survive. She was praying for God's will to be done. I heard her clearly. "Lord, if you send her back, please make her a light. Not to shine on the world, but to lead people back to you." I saw a delicate thread stretching from her heart into the heavens. And in that moment, I realized that prayer was my path home. I slipped back into my body. No jolt. No pain. Just a growing heaviness, like a soul re-entering gravity. I opened my eyes. The lights were dim. I could smell antiseptic. I heard the rhythmic beeping of machines. My senses ached, but I wasn't afraid. I knew I had returned, but I was no longer the same. I closed my eyes again and remembered the last thing Jesus had said to me. "Fast with love, not with fear." And I whispered to myself, "Amen." What happened next? I'll tell you. I'll tell you what it's like to carry a new soul into an old world. The reactions, the changes, the people who didn't understand. and the quiet decision to live honestly in a life that often prefers illusion. I'll tell you how I learned to fast again, but this time, not with my stomach, but with my heart. I woke up in the cold, sterile room of the ICU, but this time, I didn't feel like I had simply survived. I felt like I had been sent. My eyes were blurred with tears. Not from pain, but from the deep knowing that I had gone and come back. That I had seen, been known, been loved, and now I had been entrusted. I heard the doctor calling my name. I couldn't answer right away. But inside, something whispered, "I've returned." But I'm no longer the same. The days that followed passed like a gentle mist. My body was weak, but my spirit had never been stronger. I lay in that hospital bed, staring out the glass window. Daylight no longer looked like just light. It felt like a message, a greeting, an invitation to live truthfully. A nurse came in and asked what I wanted to eat. I said, "Just a glass of water, and if you don't mind, a few minutes of silence." No one quite understood why I needed the silence so much. But I did, because for the first time in my life, I finally understood where true fasting begins from stillness. When I was discharged, I returned to my apartment. Everything looked the same. The little cactus by the window, the teapot I used to serve guests, the fasting journal I had abandoned on day 7. But I was no longer the woman who had written those pages. I no longer read the Bible to memorize it. I read to be led. I no longer prayed to persuade. I prayed to be reshaped. I no longer fasted to prove to heaven I was good enough. I fasted to remind myself that I needed God more than I needed air. You ask me what changed after dying and coming back. The answer is this. I let go of the need to control how God moves. I stopped demanding, stopped comparing, stopped measuring how worthy I was. And I began learning how to live with a soft heart. A heart that forgives even when no one apologizes. A heart that lets someone else be right. A heart that remains quiet while others argue about what's holy. I returned to church a month later. The pastor looked at me and asked, "Are you doing okay?" I smiled gently and replied, "God is okay. So I'm okay." I didn't tell anyone the full story. Because this isn't a story for debate. It's a testimony for those who need it, who hunger for it, who are standing at the edge and are finally ready to let go of themselves. I began to write, not to publish, but to awaken. I wrote down what God had spoken to me. I recorded every thread of light I had seen. I redrew the map of the soul in words, in tears, and long silences. And I sent small pieces of it to old friends, those I knew were hurting. One replied, "I fasted for 40 days, asking for healing, but it wasn't until I read what you sent that I finally surrendered to God." Another said, "I thought I was fasting the wrong way. Turns out, I just needed to humble myself a little more." Those responses didn't fill me with pride. They filled me with fear. The holy kind. Because I realized that when you've been shown the truth, you no longer have the right to stay silent. And so I fasted again. But this time no one knew. No social media post. No marks on a calendar. No specific goals. Only a whisper in my heart. I want to be near you. Not to receive, but to understand. Not to win, but to melt. I skipped one meal. Then 2. Then a week. But not according to a plan. Only as I felt led. I fasted while forgiving the person who had hurt me the most. I fasted and picked up the phone to call my stepmother, the one I had silently resented for 10 years. I fasted and wrote an email to a former coworker apologizing, even though I wasn't the one at fault. I wasn't fasting to change my circumstances. I was fasting to change myself. Now, I no longer encourage people to fast just because they want to encounter God. I tell them this instead. Fast if you're ready to let go of yourself. Because God is not hiding. We just need enough stillness to realize He's always been there with us. Right in the ordinary. In the moment you choose silence instead of proving a point. In the split second you offer your seat in a crowded cafe. In the quiet grace of forgiving someone who never asked. In the holy act of letting go. I had to die to learn how to truly live. I had to fast the wrong way to learn how to fast the right way. I had to scream to discover the beauty of silence. I had to go far just to see. He was never far at all. It was too loud to hear Him breathe. And now, I want to say this to you, the one reading or listening to these words. If you're fasting, if you're praying, if you're waiting on a miracle, pause. Ask yourself, am I giving up food but holding on to something in my heart? Am I demanding something from God? Am I trying to make Him follow my timeline? Am I fasting with my heart or just with my stomach? Remember what He told me. I don't need an empty stomach. I need a broken heart. And if you're ready, then fast. But not to be heard, fast to learn how to listen. Not to change him, but to dissolve into him. Not to force him into your life, but to step fully into his. Because the truth is, you were never forgotten. You just needed to be quiet long enough to realize he's still waiting just behind your next breath.